What if I told you that your greatest weapon is silence? The act of withdrawing and saying nothing can have a cascading effect that transforms everything. The truth is that most men underestimate the power of walking away, not as a sign of defeat, but as a calculated move when you stop talking to a woman. Now, let's face it. Most men are afraid of going silent because they believe it will make them appear weak or lose control. Pursuing pleas or making an effort to defend yourself simply makes your case weaker. Women who constantly seek approval find attraction in men who value them even in the face of rejection. The moment you stop interacting, a woman will notice a change in the dynamic, and even if she acts as though she doesn't, her thoughts will race. Why isn't he calling? Did he lose interest? Is he seeing someone else? The man she used to feel comfortable ignoring suddenly becomes the one she can't stop thinking about. But this is where it gets intriguing, since not all women react the same way. Some will pursue you assiduously when you go silent. In this video, we're delving deeply into the psychology behind a woman's reaction to your silence. You'll learn the subtle signs she's feeling your absence, the reasons behind her behavior, and how to use this knowledge to maintain your power. Some women will test your boundaries in an attempt to regain control, while others won't care at all. These are the women who never truly valued you to begin with. It's time for you to wake up. Silence isn't the end. Rather, it's the start of a new game in which you eventually gain control. She begins pursuing you for approval. She begins pursuing you for approval. When a woman stops talking to you, something intriguing happens. She begins to doubt herself. This is particularly true if she's accustomed to you being available all the time, always texting first, or constantly attempting to resolve conflicts. Your silence deafens her, and suddenly, the attention she once took for granted becomes a necessity. Why does this happen? Human psychology simply thrives on validation. When you give her attention and reassurance all the time, she feels secure in your presence, almost as if it were guaranteed. But when you take that away, you introduce an element of uncertainty. Women, like everyone else, crave certainty. They want to feel valued, desired, and admired. When you take a step back, she begins to feel the absence of your validation, which leads to a chase that may appear subtle at first, but may cause her to respond to your social media posts more quickly. Her missing your texts or calls isn't the issue. She needs to know she still matters to you. For many women, validation serves as a mirror, reflecting their worth in the eyes of others. When you stop giving her that reflection, she starts chasing it. She may laugh a little too hard at your jokes, or casually bring up inside jokes you both share, but over time, her actions may become more direct. She may reach out to ask why you've stopped talking, or bring up something seemingly random just to get your attention. Consider this situation. A man is dating a woman who is used to him calling her every evening to check in, but one day he stops calling and becomes completely silent, focusing on himself and not reaching out. At first, she assumes he must be busy, but by the second or third day, she begins to feel uneasy and starts to wonder why he isn't calling. Did I do something wrong, or is he losing interest? Suddenly, she's the one texting him, asking if everything is okay, or coming up with ways to get back in touch. This change is powerful because it rebalances the dynamic, and when she begins to chase him, it demonstrates that your absence has created a void that she is desperate to fill. But the secret is that you don't fill it for her. Instead, you remain silent and allow her actions to reveal her intentions. This doesn't imply being cold or manipulative. Rather, it means realizing the power of space and allowing her to consider the true meaning of your presence. When she pursues you, it's not only to get approval again, it's also to realize that she values you more than she initially believed, and that she checks your borders to regain control. After stopping communication, a woman may test your boundaries. This isn't always a conscious act. It's frequently motivated by a desire to regain control that she feels she's lost. Consider it this way: by remaining silent, you've upset the equilibrium she's become accustomed to, and now she's not sure where she stands with you, which may cause her to act in unexpected ways. Boundary testing frequently takes subtle shapes. At first, she may send ambiguous or playful messages like, "Wow, someone's gone quiet," or "I guess you're too busy for me now." In order to get you to break your silence and reassure her that she still has control, these comments are meant to elicit a response and see if you'll resume your previous chasing behaviors. If these gentler approaches fail, she may try to incite jealousy by bringing up other men in her life or sharing pictures on social media with cryptic captions. This is her way of saying, "Look at me, I'm still desirable, and you're missing out." But here's the catch. None of this is about the other men or the pictures. It's about seeing if you'll crack under the pressure and reach out to her. For example, let's say you've been dating a woman who's used to you always responding within minutes of her texts, but now you've decided to step back and focus on yourself. At first, she sends a playful, "Did you lose your phone?" message when you don't reply immediately. She follows up with something more pointed, like, "Guess, I'll just hang out with someone who actually has time for me." This is where most men make a mistake. They fall into the trap. They respond defensively or try to explain themselves, thinking it will fix things. But in reality, responding only confirms that her boundary test worked, and she's still in control. Instead, you need to hold your ground when you don't react to her provocations. It forces her to confront her own behavior. She begins to realize that testing your boundaries won't get the reaction she's looking for, and in this moment, she either respects your newfound independence or reveals that her intentions were never genuine. The lesson here is straightforward. When a woman pushes your boundaries, it's not an indication of strength, but rather of insecurity. By remaining composed and unflappable, you demonstrate to her that you're a man who values himself enough to avoid playing games, and ultimately, this is what gains you genuine respect she pretends to have. She acts as though she doesn't care, but in reality, she overthinks everything. When you stop talking to a woman, one of the most typical and annoying reactions you'll encounter is the appearance of indifference. She'll pretend as though your silence doesn't affect her, but in reality, she's overanalyzing everything. She seems to be attempting to persuade herself that your absence is meaningless, but really, it's all she can think about. This is a defensive tactic. Simply put, instead of displaying how much your silence is hurting her, women will put on a brave front and act distant, or as though she's fine without you. In reality, though, she's doing exactly what you're doing, thinking about what's really going on and why you pulled away. This is where it gets interesting, as she's acting indifferent. Women don't like to appear vulnerable, especially when they feel like they might be the ones losing control. She is actually extremely aware of everything you do, including everything you post and share whenever she sees you out with someone else. Even if you just leave her alone for a few hours, she will still analyze everything, and she may begin to overanalyze every little detail. This persistent overanalysis is an indication that your silence is working as intended. You have given her time to think, but during that time, she has been inundated with questions, such as why he hasn't called, whether he has met someone new, whether he is truly losing interest in her, or if he is just trying to test me. These ideas, though rarely expressed, dominate her thoughts and feelings. She acts as though she doesn't care because vulnerability is often viewed as weakness, and many women are conditioned to hide it because they don't want to come across as needy or clingy. Most can't hide it for long, because the more she tries to act unaffected, the more obvious it is that she's thinking about you. Her world has been completely upended by the silence you've created, and she's desperately trying to make sense of it. It's like a puzzle she can't quite solve, and every time she tries to justify your actions, she ends up with more questions. Being silent has one of the strongest effects. You don't need to say anything or make big gestures. Your absence does. She may act distant or even try to act as though she's fine without you, but in the end, she's just trying to keep it together while secretly wondering what you're thinking and feeling. Most men don't even notice this emotional battle, but by maintaining your ground and staying silent, you force her to confront her own feelings. She will overthink, second-guess, and eventually begin asking herself the questions that will cause her to reach out to you, despite her best attempts to appear unaffected. She's looking for someone to validate. She seeks validation from someone else. When you cut off communication with a woman, it's possible that she will look for approval elsewhere, though this isn't always the case. It's not always about moving on or replacing you, but sometimes it's about calming the bruised ego that silence can cause. However, if you've put yourself in a situation where he feels the need to seek attention from someone else, you might want to consider the dynamics of the relationship in the first place. Now, before you get defensive, let's talk about something crucial. Many men mistakenly believe that remaining silent is a foolproof strategy, but in reality, if your silence is perceived as immature, inconsistent, or manipulative, it's understandable that she may seek solace elsewhere. Women don't want to feel like they're playing an emotional tug-of-war with you if you've been dragging her along without giving her clarity, or constantly vanishing and then reappearing when it's convenient for you. She's not the issue, you are. When used purposefully, silence can foster communication and introspection, but when misused or used as a weapon, it can create a rift between you and force her into the arms of someone who understands how to value her appropriately. This isn't about placing all the blame on men, it's about accountability. If you're not providing security, consistency, or mutual respect, what do you expect her to do? If you've been clear and purposeful and she still looks for approval elsewhere, that's her fault. Some people have an addiction to attention and will seek it from any source. Sit around waiting endlessly for breadcrumbs. Such conduct is a warning sign. Simply put, you don't want to spend your energy on a lady who is constantly looking for approval from someone else the moment you stop chatting. So here's some advice. Don't only concentrate on her response. Focus on your behavior as well. Are you using silence to control her, or are you making room for something meaningful to develop? If the latter, her response will reveal all you need to know about her personality and emotional development. However, if she immediately seeks approval from someone else, it should serve as a warning not only about her, but also about the type of relationship you're choosing. After all, you deserve someone who accepts you for who you are and doesn't require constant attention to feel worthy. Keep a high standard for yourself and remember that partnerships are mutually beneficial. Ensure your actions are appropriate. She totally vanishes. The reality of indifference, direction 5. She vanishes entirely. The reality of indifference is that a woman may pursue a totally other path or vanish completely if you cease communicating with her. She seems to vanish completely, leaving you to wonder if she ever cared in the first place. No calls, texts, or subtle attempts to capture your attention. When a woman disappears after you've gone silent, it's usually one of two things. Either she's genuinely done, or she's protecting herself. If she's genuinely done, it means she's already emotionally checked out before you stop talking to her. Your silence didn't create the distance. It revealed it. In this scenario, it's likely that she has been anticipating the opportunity to move on, and your silence simply provided her with the signal to do so. On the surface, People often misinterpret this reaction as being unaffected or indifferent. This can be a difficult reality to accept, but it's necessary to deal with a woman who disappears because she wasn't initially deeply invested. And ultimately, that's not someone you want to pursue. However, more often than not, her disappearing act isn't about being done, but rather about regaining control. When a woman feels like she's losing control in a dynamic, her instinct may be to completely withdraw. Consider it a form of emotional self-preservation. Rather than pursuing you or displaying vulnerability, she removes herself from the equation completely in the hopes of regaining some control over the circumstance. This response can be quite upsetting for males, as it evokes feelings of disdain or abandonment. However, it's important to remember, silence in return for silence does not imply disinterest. This reaction doesn't necessarily mean that she doesn't care. In fact, it frequently means the opposite. When someone goes silent, it's usually because they're processing their emotions internally. She's probably pulling back to see if you'll break first. If you reach out to her, it confirms that her disappearing act worked, but if you don't, it forces her to face the reality of losing you. She is unsure if speaking up will provide her clarity in these circumstances, or if being silent will save her pride. Your greatest strength is patience. If she disappears to test you, your lack of response will show her that you're not easily manipulated, and if her silence is genuine indifference, your restraint will save you the energy of investing in someone who isn't fully invested in you. Ultimately, the truth about indifference is that it's rarely as simple as it seems. Whether she disappears to test you or to protect herself, your best course of action is to remain calm. Let her actions reveal her true intentions, and have faith that the right people will value your presence without needing to coerce you into proving it. Nobody likes to acknowledge that if you're following a woman who is constantly seeking approval from other people, you're wasting your time. It's simple. No matter how much emotional energy you invest in her, if she's seeking attention from someone else, the moment you pull away, it's about her own insecurities, not yours. I understand that this may cause some pain, particularly if you've experienced emotional turmoil, but it's time for men to wake up and cease attempting to manipulate others' emotions. Don't fool yourself into believing that playing games with silence will make her chase you if she's not willing to invest in the relationship. What has been your experience when a woman sought validation from someone else? Did you fall for it, or did you recognize your worth? The true strength in any relationship comes from knowing your worth and standing your ground. If she can't see it, let her go. Post your anecdotes in the section below. I would love to talk with you about how you handled it. Let's exchange and grow together.